So I just want to do a quick intro. Just thank you to Danielle. Danielle does, well, she'll be able to tell what she does in Nebraska, but she has been somebody who has always had a lot of answers. And there's been a lot of times that I've asked her things, and she's been very organized and been on a lot of our technical support teams. And so super excited that you can hear from the perspective of not just us or OME, but from someone who is in the trenches there working specifically with data now. So Danielle, thank you. I turn the time over to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for being here. I know a lot of you have been on Zoom all day, so hopefully you're not too tired of being on your Zoom all day. I know that can get tiring. So what I want to talk about today is how to develop an effective data collection schedule. And so we're just going to share kind of what we do in Nebraska, what Nebraska looks like. Some key information. We'll be taking a look at Nebraska's data checklists for project data specialists. So this kind of comes from a standpoint not as a state data person, but for those at maybe a project level or district or regional level entering data. And I'll show you what Nebraska looks like. Creating a timeline for district or regional level data collection, and some of the reports we use to support data quality, IDNR, and services. And if you have any questions at any time, I'm watching the chat on one screen, and so feel free to chime in. Okay, so I am the state data coordinator for the Nebraska MigraNet program. I've been in the program for 11 years, I believe. I was trying to count back to remember how long I've been with the program. I'm the M6 data admin and the admin for our state data system, MIS 2000. I've been on IDRC on the technical support team, and I cannot remember how many years it's been, but I've been on the technical support team for quite a few years, and have been really excited these last few years with the data resources that we are coming up with, and I've been really excited to work on that work group. And just a random fact about me, I collect garden gnomes and bouncy balls. So I'd like to start, if you could just put in the chat what state you're with and what does your state use for your MEP data collection. I mentioned Nebraska uses MIS 2000. Yeah, I see a lot of MIS 2000. I had an opportunity to take a look at SMART that Colorado uses, and I was really impressed with their data collection through that. That was very interesting. Oops. A lot of MIS users. FileMaker Pro. Awesome. It's always interesting to see kind of how everybody's, what databases everybody's using. I know it's a topic of conversation during our work group meetings as well. We try to take into consideration what everybody's using. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about how Nebraska is organized as far as the MigraNet program in our regions. So we have 14 projects, and we have them separated into regional projects and district projects. So you can see the different colors here, like the ESU 13 region is everything in green. ESU 7 region covers all of this. ESU 1 is this lighter green. ESU 15 is in pink down here. ESU 9 is mostly like the central and down. And the Head Start region is in red. And we have also district projects that are mostly in charge of their own districts. Oh, I forgot Omaha's. over here. Our district projects mostly cover just their school districts. But in the case of like Alliance, we'll cover all of Box Butte County. Let's see, Crete is over here. So you see they're within the regions, but we have just these areas that cover their own district. Lincoln, Madison, Fremont. Yeah. Grand Island is over here. And so within each of these projects, each one has a data specialist for the most part. There's one data specialist covers a couple, but for the most part, each of these projects has their own data specialist who is in charge of entering data for the children, the migrant ed children that are in their areas that they cover. So a data specialist role, they collect the data and enter the data for students in their project, whether it's their region or district. So like a region would be in charge of multiple school districts. So it's a little more challenging for a regional data specialist for that reason. I have them organized in the last presentation, they talked about regions and splitting M6 into regions. I have each of them split up into a regional M6 admin. And they're the student information contact for recruiters and service providers. So anybody working with students or meeting families that may not have immediate access to the data system, they are usually their contact to gather any extra information that they may need from the database. And then they're in charge of their own quality control. I do quality control methods at the state as well, but it's really helpful. And we have such a great group of data specialists in Nebraska. I know I've seen a few of them on here. But we have a really good group of data specialists who are extremely organized, and they run reports and go above and beyond to make sure that their data is clean. And it makes my job so much easier when doing state performance reports, evaluation reports, and quality control in general. So I'm really thankful that we have people to kind of help break that down and to be in charge of that information. So we'll talk a little bit about the M6 data elements. These are M6 data elements that the data specialists are in charge of making sure are up to date and that we meet the requirements for the program. So first of all, they're in charge of verifying student demographics that are collected on the COE, and you can see them listed here. Student name, the date of birth. Often those are items that you find when you're verifying with schools that may be a little bit different, spelling, things like that. Keeping the email addresses and phone numbers and everything up to date. Then enrollment information. And you can see there the enroll date in school, their grade level, their PFS indicators, continuation of services, their immunization records, if they've got out of state transcripts, their Algebra 1, all of that. Then also they're in charge of collecting and entering assessment data and everything that goes along with that, and also course history data. They also, this is more state specific, but they track student needs, which we are at-risk indicators, and you can see a list of our at-risk indicators, which include a lot of things you would have to get from the school, like their attendance, low performance, if they're considered to be an English learner, if they're in early childhood but aren't attending PK. So if they're the age to go to preschool, but they're not going to preschool. And then of course, all of the services that are provided, instructional and support services. And we also use Connect Team. And Nebraska has actually loved Connect Team so much, where we're using the IDRC version that's available to us. And we decided to go ahead and just buy our own license because we decided to use it for even more than what we had started with. So Connect Team is a great tool, and I highly recommend going to the sessions tomorrow about Connect Team and learning more if you're interested and haven't already dug into that. So the way they collect this data, and I've mentioned that for regional data specialists, this is more of a process than it is for the district project data specialist. So a district project usually has access to the student information system within the school. Nobody in the state has access to any of this information on a statewide basis, nor does it feed directly into MIS 2000. So, and I know some states are lucky enough to have that worked out with their state, and that can happen, and we hope to be there someday. But for now, it's kind of a tedious process. So what regional data specialists need to look at is more of the continuous communication with the school, because they may not have access to their data systems. And then there's also family communication, report cards, or if the student has school system access to gain some of this information, it can be worked out with those that are in the homes to gather some of this information, and from service providers who are working with these students on an individual basis and have more of an idea of their academics and what's going on in the school. So those are more of like our resources and how we're gathering this information. So what we've done is we've developed what we call a yearly checklist for data collection. And it was developed by myself and the Nebraska data specialist to help organize this data collection. When we meet we usually meet in the fall for a fall state conference. And we try to update this. We talk about this annually. And in case things have changed or new ideas come to the table, but just to make sure that this document meets the needs of the data specialist and making sure that we're meeting all of the requirements for the MEP. This checklist is, there are some deadline dates that we set, but a lot of it is open to, it's flexible, depending on the project's preferences or schedule, or a lot of times it's just whenever the school has entered information or has time to give you the information. There's a lot of variables. So this is just a tool and a resource. And we found that it's great for onboarding new staff, people that come into the role of the data specialist, not quite understanding or maybe overwhelmed of what information to collect and when these deadlines are. I know that when we've had project directors or coordinators come on board, they find this really helpful to have some sort of schedule for data collection, just so they can make sure that they're meeting all of the requirements. So I'm just going to go over each of the categories here that we have and when we do certain things. And if you have questions about what something means, or if you'd like more information, please use the chat. So here's what we have under our daily/weekly. Check for new COEs in your project daily. We have what's called an accepted COE report, and this report will generate a list of COEs between the dates that you specify. So I always recommend overlapping just in case we miss. Those of you that use MIS 2000, and if you're using the app, you know, you have to upload and things like that. So I always recommend, you know, like maybe a 3-day overlap on the dates, even if you've checked a specific date before. You might, you know, go back just so you don't miss anybody. So then once you have a new COE, initial enrollment information must be entered within 10 working days after a COE is approved. I think that was one of our questions in the last presentation about M6, when that information is due. And by initial enrollment information, we're talking about like the enroll date to school, the enroll type, whether it's regular, summer term, the student's grade. Those are the initial enrollment data elements. And then I suggest weekly running a missing initial enrollment report, which will really catch if somebody didn't pull into your accepted COE report. This should run a list of any student who is missing any of those data elements that I mentioned, so that you don't miss some of those COEs and we're not waiting on student enrollment information. This is also daily or weekly. Update OSY recovery. This should be done just as soon as you have the information, but we collect OSY recovery information, such as if they're in alternative education, in a GED program, a high school equivalency program, or have re-enrolled in school. And secondary credit accrual, if they're doing that. We suggest just updating that as soon as you have the information, but it should be done either daily or weekly, get that out of the way. Same with new family information. If the family has a new address, obviously if they qualify for a new COE, that's a whole different situation. But, you know, say the family moves to another apartment or just down the street or something, make sure you update their address, phone number, contact information. And then course history and assessment information, as soon as it's available, we have that in the daily and weekly. But I'll also talk more about that in some of our monthly when there are good times to check on that. And then create a new enrollment for children who have turned 3 years old, as it happens, as needed. I know that's not a requirement. We do have to verify that children who have turned 3 years old, we have to verify that they're still in our project when they've turned 3 years old. But as a state, we've found it to be more helpful to just give them a new enrollment line, and then we can tie everything to that enrollment line. All right, so this is stuff that we ask that is done monthly. Supplemental services, our data specialists are really good at getting this in right away, and I don't know that any of them wait a whole month to enter everything, but as good practice, we decided that it would be a good idea to just make sure that everything is up to date for the month at the end of the month. All student move entries should be up to date. This is more of documenting the move in MIS 2000. Each project kind of has their own, they make sure that their move notices are sent right away in M6, but they have their own procedures of maybe who sends that move notice and when and how. So this is more just making sure that all of those student moves are accurate and up to date by the end of the month in MIS 2000. Run a student summary report, and I'll talk more about this. I think when I've presented a few years ago, probably for IDRC, I talked about our student summary report and how we sort data, and it was an Excel presentation. But we constantly are adding items to this report, and it is kind of our lifeline. This is the report I run all of my state numbers off of, and the data specialists run it when they're doing quality control and things like that. So something that we ask them to do monthly by running this report is they actually have to enter the state IDs. And like I mentioned, we don't have access to a state data system to retrieve these necessarily, unless somebody has access to the regional data, or not regional, the district database. They would have to collect these IDs and get them from the schools, and then enter them into MIS 2000. And so we ask that those are updated monthly, that those are put in. And then report child count, their priority for services, figuring out who's served, who's gotten instructional services, supplemental services, and any other key data elements. And we ask that they report them to their project director and staff. So something they might be able to do is get a list of their priority for service students monthly to their service providers, so that they know who to prioritize, and you can then see maybe who is priority for service but hasn't been served yet, and they can check to see that all of their needs are being met. So a little more about the student summary report. And I can give you more information on this if you'd like to build a similar report for your state. I can give you more information on exactly what's in it, but I'll kind of go over it now. This report is, like I mentioned, used most often and includes student name, date of birth, sex, race, age, their most recent project ID, enrollment information, the school they attend, the grade, their IDs, MIS 2000, their state ID, M6 ID, the COE ID for the most recent history line, their enrollment information, as well as if they've moved or graduated, gotten their GED, the residency verification, their M6 term date, QAD, their Algebra 1 indicator, the employer information. That was something that was added, maybe within the last couple of years. We added employer information and their qualifying activity for the most recent COE. Their at-risk and PFS indicators, and then each and every service that the child has gotten. So I'm going to actually pull up the spreadsheet here so you can see. It's a big report. Let me know if you can't see that. I think it was working. So you can see that we can tell which project the child was most recently in. And then the projects can run this, either run and look at the whole state or just look at their own project. But I'll just scroll through here and you can see the information that we have. So really, if I wanted to filter by the age grade group or the grade, I could filter 10th graders and then look at their Algebra 1 indicator and see who's been marked as having Algebra 1, and then I know who I need to check on too, or immunization records. Let's see, Cynthia asked, how many total students do you have? We've been pretty much averaging around 40, is it around 45-ish, maybe 4,300. I'm not sure what our child count is right now at the moment. I haven't run it for this year very recently, but yeah, it's usually we report at least in the 3 to 21. Let's see, COE ID, their QAD. I like to ask that they run and look at the M6 term date so that they know who's going to be expiring, and then they can inform the recruiters, the service providers, or send out letters, whatever needs to be done with that. And I'll talk more about that too. The employer information is great for IDNR if you can see the qualifying activities and what counties, if they're Nebraska counties. Obviously, we didn't go as far as to put in counties from other states, but we do keep track of that information, and it's really a good way to see what the most recent, or just looking at through through the year, what qualifying activities had been qualified. And then, like I mentioned, we have our needs information here. And you can see who's been marked with those specific needs or those at-risk factors. Who has had a QAD within the performance period, and who is PFS, who's been served instructionally, who's been served support services, and then we have all of these are support services. So we can filter and dive into anybody's, what they've received throughout the year. Parent guardian 1 and 2, family language, that is something that I've also said would be good data to share with your project, just to revisit how many languages you have in your specific area, and so you can best meet the needs of those families. And then their current information, if you'd like to use this to create labels or things like that to send out letters. So this is a really big report, but this is kind of our lifeline report that we use very often. So those were our basic what we asked to be done every month, but then there are certain months that there are things specifically due within that month. We asked that the regular term enrollment data is done by September 30th, and that all children are verified after September 1st, and that's due September 30th. I highly suggest that we don't do our enrollments until September 1st, if that's I think a better way to not enroll students who we can't verify that they were already here, and then have to go back and change an enrollment if a student wasn't here. I think it's a better practice so that we don't accidentally have children that don't belong because they have moved. All med alert and immunization flag data for new enrollments is due by September 30th. So basically all those basic enrollments we ask is completed. And then this is a good time to run an end of eligibility report to find students whose eligibility will be ending in the first semester. And then you can give information to the IDNR staff to follow up with families, check for recent moves, and then do what you need to do in the database to end those enrollments or send out letters and make sure the family's notified. Reevaluate student needs. This is a good time, especially if you're talking with the school, to check for student information and find out their attendance records and their grades, and update the needs panel in MIS 2000, and then update throughout the semester as necessary. But having it in September is just a reminder that this would be a good time to just look at all students in general. December is where we get some students, if they're graduating in the middle of the year after the first semester, if they're graduating, check on that information, then update the graduation data. And that can be done in December or January. Some of our projects have mentioned that it is more available in January, and some it's in December. So it really just depends on the district and in the area. And then again, running an end of eligibility report, you can do that in December or January to see whose students are ending eligibility. And then some of these, like I mentioned, were December/January. So you see them in both the end of eligibility report, reevaluating student needs, and updating the information. Re-verifying students, it's not a requirement that students are verified again at the beginning of the year or after the first semester, but this is a good time to verify that students are still there. We should constantly be checking to make sure our students haven't moved, because they're usually very mobile. And so just making sure that they're still there. And if you do verify students, entering a new verification date, just so everybody knows when the last time that was checked on. This is optional, but we put in here, changing your security passwords mid-year. If you, it's good practice to change those up every once in a while. So this is just a reminder that that would be a good time to do that. And then fall state assessment and course history data is usually available by about this time. So this would be a good time to check on that information and get that entered. Then in March, updating the MedAlert and immunization availability information in MIS 2000, we have that there. And reevaluating student needs and updating the at-risk in the needs panel, updating that in MIS 2000, and then doing that throughout the semester as necessary. And then we have for May, so the end of the school year, usually. So Algebra 1, checking on that, and I have that on May or June, checking the students that have completed Algebra 1 or higher, and entering that flag in MIS 2000 would be good to do around this time. An end of eligibility report, I have that to run in May. Also, to find students whose eligibility has expired during the second semester, and then indicate continuation of services where appropriate. And then graduation data and spring assessment and course history data, that could be May or June. So I have those in either place. And then in June, we have a deadline set to move out all the enrollments into the summer. So withdraw from the regular term by June 30th, and then do your summer term enrollments, and including any health and needs data. And that's due by June 30th as well. And then those same ones that I mentioned might be more readily available in May or June. Algebra 1, collecting spring assessment and course history data, and updating graduation data should be done in June. And then in August, another end of eligibility report to find students whose eligibility is ended during the summer term, and indicating continuation of services if appropriate. This is a good time to run some extra quality control. Now, we mentioned that they're running a student summary report monthly. And so while gathering that information and taking a look at your students, that is a level of quality control I would consider. But I really emphasize, because we're wrapping up the performance period, to do some extra quality control, check the verification dates, the services. Or I put that there twice, verification, things like that. Let's see, I think I missed a. Okay, sorry, I was looking at, I wasn't watching the chat box. And then you can start your summer withdrawals and regular term enrollments, and that is optional. I mentioned before that I prefer that we wait until September, but some projects did bring up some of their, how they organize, and they prefer to do verification separate from some of that. So there's flexibility there, but just as long as there are systems in place so we don't have kids that are enrolled that are gone. So I went through that kind of quickly, I guess. And I didn't see that there were a lot of questions, but I would like to open this up and find out what do you do either daily, weekly, monthly, or at certain times of the year that you think would be good to add to this list, or something just that you have on your own list of things that you like to get done at certain times of the year.
Do you want any of them to unmute themselves if they want to share?
Yeah, they absolutely can. I didn't know if they could. Yeah.
Well, they can, but if you raise your hand, if anyone wants to share, we can definitely unmute you if anybody finds it easier to say it than to type it in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to repeat the question just to make sure everybody knows?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, anybody who has any suggestions or things that weren't on our list that are on your list of things to do, whether it's something that you do daily or monthly. Yes, I do have this checklist. I'll get this to Jessica, and are you able to just put it with the recording of the video, or?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, we can do that. I can also share the student summary report.
Gloria, if you're wanting to unmute yourself, then I can unmute you. So let me see if we can find you. Somebody raise their hand. Who's ever raised hand first. Let's see. No, I can't. Oh, there she is. Okay, you can talk now.
Hi, one of the things that we do is the M6 reconciliation. We put it on that checklist to do it at least. In my case, I try to do it monthly so that, the least numbers we have, the better to find the mistake or the error, rather than doing it quarterly, how M6 suggested it.
Thank you. Yes, and that is on for Nebraska. That's more on my list to do M6 reconciliation. But I think I think that's kind of what we're missing on here too, is more about what we're doing in M6, even at the data specialist level. So that's a really good add to a list like this. Thank you. Let's see. Mirna mentioned, how about a contact person at the school? I'm not sure you have that already. So when you're talking about a contact person at the school, is it like you're checking with the same, is that what you mean? You're checking with the same person at the school where the student's enrolled and schedule with that person? Thanks, Gloria. I know our data specialists, the ones in the regional data specialists especially have to have the open communication. They have to have some sort of contact within the school that's aware of like their schedule, their timeline when they need to collect information, and that understand the program. Oh, including them in the report, like the student summary report, including that. person in the student summary report. We don't collect, I guess, on our data system, we don't have really a place to put who the contact person is, unless it would be maybe in the school enrollment comment box. But that would be helpful if we had somewhere to put that information, and maybe that's something we can do more in Connect Team, is keep those school contacts. And that would be especially helpful if we had somebody new coming in and needed to know who to contact at the school. Myrna also asked, when you do the September enrollments, do you enroll the student with an August date if they started in August? In Nebraska right now, we're doing our enrollment and withdrawals according to the performance period. We found that by doing that, we have less data error than how we were doing it previously. And I know all states don't do that. But that's just what we're doing. And then if they move, we put the actual date that they moved or left the district. But yeah, you will notice that our September enrollments on our on the report are usually 9/1.
Well, and that's important if you're trying to do those re-verifications to really verify that they're present. If you put it in August, it's not going to show up that you have a date present from that performance period between September. So I think to answer her question too, it depends on what your enrollment is for, but if it's for verifications at all, then you definitely need to make sure it's after that September 1.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, not all states would do that, and I'm sure some states are like, "What do you mean?" But that's just how we've done it, and it's helped us to not have so many data errors, I guess. So let's see. I may have missed this in the presentation, but I make sure to generate our living PFS list monthly. So I think I had that on the monthly. Yes, that when they run that student summary report to report out to their project and give a list of PFS students to service providers, or even just reporting to their project saying, this is who we have now, this is how many PFS we have, this is our child count right now. And that is also helpful if somebody should be PFS but isn't, and it's due to data error, or if there's a child that's just not on the list, then usually we can figure out why and become detectives and figure out what's going on with particular students. So that's really good for quality control. California mentioned they use the first day of school. Yes, Tracy, we use performance period dates instead of school year enrollment dates if we are rolling them over. And I don't know how many states do that. I know there were a couple other states that I had conversations with way back that were doing something similar.
Well, it looks like that maybe you guys, if you have any burning questions, now is your chance to ask that before we finish up today.
Let's see. I think I meant Miss Carey's, that she said update grade status, ages, schools, statute, primary, middle, etc. Let's see, Myrna asked, what do you mean include that in your report? So I'm going to go back to the monthly. So I ask each data specialist to run a report monthly and then report, like you mentioned, the PFS, their child count, services, and any other key data elements just to their project. And that's what I meant, like to include that into the report that that they may be giving to staff. Sorry, going through that kind of quick. All right, I'm a little bit early on, went through that pretty quick, but are there any other questions or comments?
I want to say you did a really good job.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for putting I'm gonna stop recording and just
Sure. And my contact information is here.